Hi everyone, and welcome back to Musings from an Expat. I apologise for not posting any content in the past few weeks, and I know that a lot has happened, and it has been rather remiss of me to not post anything, but here goes. So as I mentioned, there's lots to talk about from around the world. We've obviously had the UK general elections and all the fallout, including the Conservative deal with the DUP. We've had the Grenfell Tower tragedy, the full consequences of which are still being revealed. We've had continuing attacks on academic freedoms in Russia and Hungary. We've had a constitutional row here in the Czech Republic. Basically, an awful lot has happened since I last posted. Now, one of the reasons why I've been so slow to create this video is because basically I didn't know what to say. Obviously, I want to create interesting and original content, but what could I say about all of these things that haven't been said before? The Grenfell tragedy, for example. People died because they were poor. People died because of a series of decisions which have been made by lots of different people, but basically because money was prioritised over human life. Now, the full consequences and reasons and all these things, they won't be known until the public inquiry has been published. And even then we might not achieve the full kind of picture that I think all of us are hoping for. But the point is that I have no doubt that this event will continue to fill column inches in the British press. And for this reason, I'm not going to talk too much about this event. But I do think that there is a wider point that can be made out of it. Now, as a politics student, I read quite a lot about how social and political systems change and evolve over time. And I just think it's really interesting. I think it's interesting to see how seemingly monolithic, unbreakable systems can break down in relatively short periods of time. So if you look, the Roman Empire, the Empire of the ancient Greeks, the ancient Egyptians, all these great civilizations, they all ended up collapsing. And I think that's in some ways quite surprising, especially if you'd have been living in the Egyptian Empire at the height of its power to see what it's become now. Now, my friends and family will probably roll their eyes when they hear about this, but I want to talk about Russia in 1914. Now, Tsar Nicholas was seemingly a little bit less severe than some of his predecessors, but Russia at that time was widely acknowledged to be one of the most autocratically run states in Europe, if not the world. It had a powerful and dangerous secret police, one of the largest armies in the world, and it performed an important function in the balance of power politics at the turn of the century. Fast forward 3 years to 1917, and look at how all of this unravelled. The armies in the West had fought the Axis alliance to a relative stalemate at the cost of millions of lives. The people in Moscow and St. Petersburg were starving, and the country was basically exhausted. Now, I don't want to go into huge historical detail here, but basically the monarch and the government ended up, or the monarchy, and the government ended up totally collapsing and being swept away by a group of radical revolutionaries using the slogan, bread, land and peace. Bread, land and peace. 3 very simple messages, but powerful nonetheless. Now, I think there's a lesson that we can learn from this. So societies, especially ones in which traditions are important, are often willing to put up with a huge amount of hardship. So look at Britain, for example, 2 world wars in about 30 years, and yet the establishment remained largely intact thanks to a level of respect of what this establishment represented and a faith that it could deliver a better society. In Russia, this respect and trust seemingly disappeared. Those who mattered no longer believed that the Tsar and his associates could bring them what they wanted: bread, land and peace. But what does this have to do with modern life? So Britain isn't involved in a war in the same sense that the First and Second World Wars were total wars that had huge impacts on civilians and all this. In general, Britons have enough food to live, and I don't want to belittle the housing crisis or homelessness because these are huge issues in Britain, but I'm just saying that things could be worse. And I'm not advocating, obviously, a total overthrow of the state either, or a particularly huge overhaul of our institutions. But I do want to talk a little bit about making some changes. Firstly, in our own minds. So if you look at the Grenfell tragedy, people died because they were poor. Because the council, for whatever reason, decided to try to save money by fitting what turned out to be unsuitable cladding. This has to serve as a wake-up call. This has to tell us that saving a little bit of money here and there is not worth the human cost. We need to stop treating people like numbers on a spreadsheet and start to acknowledge that every single one of us is a person with feelings, with friends, with family. Every single one of those deaths was a tragedy. But I think when we read in the newspaper that around 80 people have died, do we really take that number in? I read an argument recently that basically argued that despite people being unhappy with systems that they live under, it often takes some kind of like big unifying event to convince people to actually advocate societal changes. Now, if you look at Britain, lots of things have happened recently, but I think that this Grenfell Tower incident has really struck a chord. I believe that this event has the potential to be this kind of spark, if you will. If this incident doesn't show the disconnection between these people at the top cutting the budgets for social housing and all these other things, and those having to live with the consequences, I don't know what will. It can't be right that people die because they're poor. What I'm saying is that we must show more compassion in our lives. We must vote for people and parties who seek not to run our country like some corporation for the benefit of the wealthy, but those who seek to do the best for all of us. We need to vote for people and parties who can show empathy, who want to help us when we fall down, who view success as more than just pounds and pence, who value the incredible contributions that many dedicated people make to the country and their local communities. And we need to think long and hard about whether we want a government who ignore the fact that certain properties are bought and sold by offshore entities, not as homes, but as investments or tax minimising vehicles. Is that conducive to a cohesive and well-connected community? Or does that help stoke resentment and lead to community isolation and marginalisation? Now, obviously you can highlight examples of poverty everywhere. In the US, for example, people die because they can't afford healthcare or health insurance. In India and other places, people die because they simply don't have access to clean water. All deaths are tragedies. We must start treating them as such and stop simply seeing them as numbers. Now, this was quite a heavy video, but as always, thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting, then please subscribe to my channel and like this video. If you have any comments or suggestions for future videos, please leave a message for me below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye!